Thank you very much for the comment. What I'd like to do is talk a bit about the destruction layer at Colchester and also perhaps a bit about perspectives of this event. So just to, in case you weren't aware, this links to a video where I included a helmet. You can go and watch the video. And this is all to do with Boudicca, who you may be aware of. She led a rebellion against the Romans in Britain, and she essentially razed Colchester, which was a pretty important city at the time in AD 60 or 61. She attacked it. There doesn't seem to have been much in the way of defense there. There were apparently only 200 veteran soldiers around. There wasn't a legion or anything substantial in terms of military response. They were fighting a losing battle. Tacitus has it that 70,000 inhabitants went missing. I'm not exactly sure what I can say on this platform, but you get the idea. It didn't end well for them. They had a last-ditch sort of holdout in the temple of Claudius, and that was set on fire. Yeah, so it went really badly for anyone in that place, anyone in Colchester in AD 60 or 61. Now, this event left a destruction layer, and a destruction layer is exactly what you think it is. It's a layer that you can often find in archaeological sites that indicates destruction, usually fire. And in fact, you can work out how hot these were by the types of things you find within the destruction layer. And this is around 2 or 3 meters below street level at Colchester. It ranges from being a couple centimeters deep, the thick as it were, to up to a meter. So really quite substantial. It's formed largely of burnt debris and other items as well, which can give us an insight into what was going on then. So, for example, there are apparently dates and wheat and peas that have been carbonized. There's molten glass, and that can also indicate how hot things got, how hot the fire was, because obviously we know how hot it needs to get to do that. And there are other types of carbonization and burning that would indicate how hot things got, and it's largely thought that it got very, very hot. Anyway, so you've got that, but what's really notable is what wasn't found in the destruction layer. There wasn't a great deal of gold or silver, which suggests that looting was of a really high standard. Everyone was taking stuff away, not much was left. And also human remains. And there was only been a couple items that have been found that are linked possibly to that event that are human. One's a jawbone and one's a shin bone. And the shin bone apparently has a cut mark in it that looks like it could have come from a weapon. Again, more is needed to understand exactly whether or not that was because of the attack. We don't know, but it seems to tally in. So that's what we've got in terms of the destruction level. It's very interesting. These things are very sad, but they can tell us a great deal. And that kind of brings me to the wider perspective on this event. Now, Boudicca obviously is a iconic figure in certainly British history and probably histories in other contexts elsewhere, because it is a rebellion. It's a rebellion which Tacitus gives us a really quite horrific backstory to, and I won't go into it, but Boudicca is attacked and her daughters are similarly attacked, or worse, or however you want to view it. Highly unpleasant. This unfortunately was the nature of I suppose, Roman imperialism at the time. And it's something that I'm not say struggle with, but it's something that I always am conscious of, because I do reenactment. I talk about the Roman army on here. I'm always very conscious of not glorifying it too much, because essentially it was a very brutal and horrific machine. I remember when I was studying at university, we had one lecturer come in talking to us about Roman Britain, and I was expecting sort of drum beating about how well organized it was and all these kind of things. And he came in and it was a really good thing that he did, because he basically said these people did horrific things, and the Roman army did do horrific things, much like other tribes were doing horrific things to other tribes as well. I should say that this wasn't the Romans acting necessarily independently in terms of their moral compass out of kilter with anyone else. People were horrific to other people back then. That's not an excuse. That's just an observation, sadly. Boudicca, when she razed Colchester, again, can't say certain words on here, but a large number of people weren't there the next day. And that was because of the attack. And however justifiable her response was, you've always got to consider what the outcome was, and certainly to those people. So these were people in AD 60, 61, some of which, perhaps most of which, weren't actually Romans as such. That had been something that had been not so much forced on them, but the average person in the street didn't have much say in anything. And one day, you're essentially not so much Roman, but you're working or living within what is now a Roman area, and your area is attacked. You are someone who is now facing a horrible end, and you weren't really responsible for what caused that. Again, this happens. This is one of the unfortunate brutalities of warfare in the ancient world. We see it a lot. The innocent are the ones that often pay the most. And I just think when it comes to Boudicca and what occurred, we always need to keep that in mind. So the things that happened to her and her daughters would have happened, but this time from her army on people in Colchester, without a doubt. Again, sadly, this was a standard thing, one of the horrors of warfare. I believe from what I see and read, it's still very much in place. Again, it's horrific. But yeah, I just think sometimes when we think about her, she is an iconic British figure, totemic in many ways for what she stood for and what she had in her backstory to justify her taking the action she did. But we always have to remember what the consequences of her actions were as well. We need to balance those out a bit. So just think about that I'll be interested in what people's thoughts are. But again, doesn't change things. She's still very much an iconic figure, very interesting figure. I wish we knew more about her because there's a bigger story to tell about Boudicca, but sadly, we don't have much in the way of sources. Certainly, we don't seem to know what her end was. But yeah, anyway, thanks again for the comment, and it did make me think. And if you're still with me, thank you.